Today's guest is a standout in the Canadian legal, what you call it, LinkedIn world, but also within the Canadian legal community as well.
You're going to find this really bizarre. I was so captivated by law. There was a time where Microsoft in the early 2000s was under siege for antitrust. Two principles will never let you down. Work smart, not hard. There are some people who are great at telling you, "Oh, I was here so late." Well, why were they there so late? Because they didn't do anything till 3 o'clock, so they can stay from 3 to 8 and say they stayed late. And the second thing is, shut up and work. It's work ethic. And I'm not talking about billable hours. I know I'm on the Billable Hours podcast.
For one, I love reading your LinkedIn posts, and I know a lot of people do. And a lot of them, I notice, are surrounding the theme of resilience.
I ask myself one question every time things go sideways. Does someone have it worse than me this second? And the answer is always unequivocally yes. So, okay, take a deep breath. This too shall pass, no different than a kidney stone passes. It's not how we want it to pass sometimes, but it passes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mo, and welcome to Billable Time, a podcast where I chat with fascinating legal professionals alongside some colleagues. A quick heads up, Peter, just a note, today's episode potentially might be taken down only because of the job that I did on my mustache trying to shave. So I don't know, this is my first time trying this out. Appreciate the patience on that. But nonetheless, today's guest is a standout in the Canadian legal, what you call it, LinkedIn world, but also within the Canadian legal community as well. As you've probably seen with some of his amazing LinkedIn posts that are incredibly insightful on just professional development, but also personal development as well. He's a managing partner at Loopstra Nixon, one of the top firms in Canada and in Toronto, with cross-border experience in a wide range of corporate matters, and honestly, just an incredible human being. I'm thrilled to have him here. Pleased to welcome Peter Saad.
Mo, it's a pleasure to be with you. I don't recognize the intro, but more importantly, today we have Mira and Mo, and
M&Ms.
I'm M&Ms, and as for mustache, it looks great, and I'm excited to be a part of the journey. So everyone knows, Mo reached out to me, cold call. We hit it off, and I was really proud of his resilience and his energy. And he told me about this podcast, and I begged and pleaded for months to be considered as a guest. So dreams come true.
Absolutely. No, it's the pleasure is mine. And honestly, you're probably one of the most not only just accomplished in terms of just your legal career, but also it's a pleasure to chat with you even on a personal level, because not a lot of people are willing or B even capable of communicating insights on how to succeed in this profession. And so the first question I'd love to ask is, did 1L Peter ever expect to have accomplished or be in the position that you're in?
When L. Peter was just trying to survive. Um, the rush to get into law school is like fierce. Um, you're shaking, you're scared, you get some rejections, you get some maybes. Eventually, a maybe becomes a yes. And then you get to law school and you show up and you're like, I've made it.
Mhm.
And then you get some eager beavers telling you about OCIs, and you're like, what the hell's that acronym? And you're like, oh man, here we go again.
Mhm.
More stress. So no, 1L Peter didn't anticipate or sort of plan a career. 1L Peter just was celebrating the milestone of getting in until you started getting the panic of all law students. Then, once you start hearing it out, and at the end of the day, you process the information, you learn, you observe, and you put your head down and work hard. And that was the journey. But no, 1L Peter was just 1L Peter thought he made it and that there was nothing else to accomplish.
I think that's probably
Mhm.
the dominating feeling of that initial, gratitude of getting into law school. Then obviously, with as the months go by, your ambitions sometimes change in that sense. But I appreciate knowing that. And we'd love to learn more about you, but I'd also love to introduce our guest co-host today. Pleased to share that this episode will be co-hosted by Mira Atala, who's a fellow Windsor Law student and who's deeply engaged in public interest, advocacy, and clinical work. She recently completed her externship with Level Justice and term at the Mental Health and Social Justice Clinic, where she returned as their research assistant. She's previously worked with Community Legal Aid, volunteered with Pro Bono Students Canada, serves as the VP for events and campaigns for Amnesty International. So it's a pleasure to have her over here, and I'll turn it over to her for the next question.
Hi Peter. It was really great meeting you. We talked about like how cold it is right now, so hopefully this conversation is a little cozier than the weather. So so we can get started. If you don't mind telling our listeners who Peter is and the dreaded question of what inspired you to go into law school. Everyone asks why law school.
So who Peter is, Peter is on a journey of figuring out who Peter is, but every day, um, I don't know. I don't know who Peter is. I think it's I'm a friend, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a bad basketball coach and an even worse referee, and I happen to practice law. Um, I think that's a huge paradigm shift for me. And if there's something, my journey that I'm trying to share with people is hoping people hear me out earlier on that paradigm shift. Um, Unfortunately, we're really stubborn as humans. We all need to touch a stove that's on to get burnt.
Mm.
And I'm hoping my journey, I can tell people the stove is hot. You don't need to get burnt because I've been burnt. Um, but that's who Peter is. And why law? Oh man, you're gonna find this really bizarre.
Mhm.
I was so captivated by law out of there was a time where Microsoft in the early 2000s was under siege for antitrust. So
Okay.
they were combining Microsoft Office and then they took out Netscape and all of this. And the United States government, the Department of Justice, was suing them for antitrust. I didn't know what the first thing was about antitrust, but this like creating a fair competition system and like hearing these arguments and advocacy. And that was my actual nexus to law. I wasn't into law from a criminal defense perspective or things like that. Like that wasn't my interest, but it was that idea of like, this is so weird. So the law is used to create fairness, equality, things like that, even in a corporate environment. And I came from sort of a business mindset and business school. So it kind of like jibed with my interests. But it was really that Microsoft antitrust case that was really interesting to see how society wants to balance capitalism and competition versus fair rules. And so that was actually the why law. It wasn't suits or anything like that, but
100%.
Hmm. I remember I was listening to a podcast you did recently as well, and you talked a lot about being MBA graduate, and you said how important that is. So for those of us who aren't doing MBA, obviously, how can we achieve that kind of level of business mindset without going into the program?
sure. You know what? Find those, like, find something at a career college, find an introduction to business course. You know, don't be scared to open financial statements and just flip at them.
Yeah.
And the best way to do it is actually you want to learn or get a reference into business, go read a prospectus of a public company on CEDAR.
Wow.
And I know that sounds like onerous, but it actually isn't because what what the government has created is a regime that says we have to assume investors don't understand business. What
Mhm.
documents should we give so they have a fair baseline? And and so you start reading that and you look at numbers and you ask questions, and it's just getting comfortable around that. Um, and people say, well, I'm not going to practice business law. I was like, sure, no problem. You want to be a good family lawyer? You need to understand business. Why? It's very easy to force spouses to continue to fight when the fight's over $50,000 and the legals are $100,000. But you need to understand that the fight's over $50,000,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Well, that's family law, for example.
Mhm.
Uh, and it just plays out in more scenarios than not. So to me, it's be an observer of the world. Read those prospectuses, see what companies are saying. How do they view their business? What is a business? What is, you know, um, and don't be scared to read the Globe and Mail business section or the Financial Post or whatever it is. It's just trying to absorb more information for sure.
Most
Yeah.
definitely. That's a really great question, Mara. And I think it's fascinating to hear just your journey from like an antitrust case to now to then ironically practicing Canadian law. But even reading about your journey, I mean, spending time earlier on in sort of a split environment of starting off in New York and then also working in Toronto, having such a diverse legal experience. I'm wondering if I can kind of roll back like a Steven Spielberg early days of of what it meant to be a lawyer like Peter Saad at that point. What would you say that early experience was of being a lawyer? And we've personally had conversations about standing out early in the profession. And I'd love to know what you did during those stages, whether it be in Toronto or New York and all these cities. What were those principles you found that helped you throughout that journey to stand out early?
So, so the first thing is it's okay to feel overwhelmed. I did, right? Um, you get there and you think you figured it all out from law school. You didn't. See, what is law school and what is law school teaching you or empowering you with? I would say it's not as much knowledge as much as it is a way to think. And that's why law school and MBA are very similar. It's how do you think? How do you process information? And no different than any journey you're on, um, two principles will never let you down. Work smart, not hard,
Mhm.
right? You don't want to be down the very busy doing nothing. And the second thing is shut up and work. It's work ethic, right? Um, someone's outworking someone, full stop.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about billable hours. I know I'm on the billable hours podcast, but I'll tell you, there are some people who are great at telling you, "Oh, I was here so late." So back to the work hard, not like work smart, not hard. Well, why were they there so late? Because
Mm.
they didn't do anything till 3 o'clock, so they can stay from 3 to 8 and say they stayed late. Well, they put in less hours than me. I just
Mhm.
left at 6,
Yeah.
right? So it's just figuring out what makes you tick. But the most important thing I would say is your work ethic, your hunger, it's all the things people can't take away from you because you control those.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point. And I guess going off of that, I don't know if you know, well, we on LinkedIn you posted that the OCIs have ended and now we're starting a whole new recruit. So to the one else that are kind of applying to the Toronto recruit right now, or those people who maybe didn't come out of OCIs with like a job, or the next recruit that didn't come out with a job, what I guess my question is, how do you think students should be finding their fit? right? Because we go into these interviews and we try to make ourselves fit into the law firm versus finding our fit in the law firm. Is this for me or them?
So law firms do a really bad job at it. Okay. And it takes two to tango, right? So if we're going to have an honest conversation, now you're not going to change law firms, so you have to learn how to adapt. How do you adapt? You know, when law firms have open houses
Mhm.
during the summer,
Yeah.
go to every single one of them. Doesn't matter if you like the firm or hate the firm, go. Why? The number one thing that is instrumental is getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
The first time you meet someone, you're uncomfortable and you're panicked and the anxiety. Well, after three or four of these meetings, it's not as uncomfortable,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? But all those events come up and you can either hang out, chill with friends, do this or do that, or go. I'm
Mhm.
not saying you're getting a job there, but it's all about level setting. What am I getting out of this experience? I'm going there to make myself uncomfortable and get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Wow.
Mhm.
right? It's the
Yeah.
journey and it's that experience. Um, and then on the OCI front, it's not the be all end all. And Mo and I spoke after OCI's, and then we spoke after the Loopstra Nixon recruitment. And and I said to him, and this is a simple rule that I follow and share. If you're applying to a job that's online, so is everyone else. Okay.
Mhm.
You may get a job that way, but you may also get a job by reaching out to firms you're actually interested in. And I have a rule, it's called two a day.
Mhm.
Contact two firms a day. Do your research. If they have a careers page and they were an OCI, don't contact them. The ship has sailed. If there's, let's say, 20 lawyers or less, maybe they're more likely to have availability. And create the opportunity.
Yep.
100%. Yeah, I can speak as a success story to this exact principle. It's funny enough you mentioned that. And I remember I was on like the probably the seventh day of doing it. And I was just like, man, this is like a not like in the back of my mind, I was like 95% this is a good idea. 5% of me, there's still that 5% where you think, am I just humiliating myself? What's going on? And then my dad walked into the room. He's like, what's going on? Like, wait, why are you look like you're down. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get a job. He's like, call two more than today. And then one guy
Mhm.
picked up. And then you follow up after that, and then next thing you know, it was the shortest interview of my life, and I'm fortunate enough to have a position there. But I think that's a really, really good point on building resilience, and also like you said, pushing yourself in places where they're not putting yourself in uncomfortable positions in order to ironically get comfortable. And so with that, I'm curious to know for the young lawyers out there. You talked about the principle of hard work, work ethic, and things like that are the intangibles per se. But let's just say specifically within the transactional space in terms of deal making, things like that, what would you say are the traits that make a good deal maker as someone that's been involved in such complex, big transactions that you find will help up and coming lawyers in the space?
I was just speaking to a first year lawyer this morning. Sorry, just 30 minutes ago. And we were talking about this, and he's like, what's your advice to me as a new corporate lawyer?
Mhm.
I said, my advice is don't just do the task, understand why you're doing the task. Sometimes people say, can you update the names and dates? Okay. That's what they need done.
Mhm.
No problem. Do that part. But put in the time to read the agreement to understand what is this agreement about. And if you go back to the lawyer who gave you the task and say, hey, I made the changes. I also read the agreement. So is this a purchase agreement? Oh, is the buyer doing this or that?
Mhm.
Immediately, someone's going to be like, hey, that's awesome that you read it. Let's chat about it. Right? So be part of the process. Don't be a paper pusher, right?
Wow.
You're not going to be a deal maker day one, right? And you don't have to be, but you have a choice to do a task or do a job,
Wow.
right? The task is updating names and dates. The job is being an advisor and a contributor to a team that is moving a deal forward. It's easier to do the task and go home.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an incredible way of looking at it. I know, Mira, I know you probably had something else you wanted to ask Peter, but
Mhm.
that's probably a great way of like having a big picture, but also, making sure those little details stay in mind for sure.
I would definitely agree because I mean like working with the health justice clinic, I could do the task, but then I think putting the time, effort, and like understanding and connecting with the individual, especially because it's client facing, like having the extra step is more important than just getting it done, and then just walking out the door. So it's very important. So we understand and we're mindful of the time. You're a very prominent and inspirational character in the legal field, especially for us aspiring lawyers. Every day when I open LinkedIn and I see Peter Saad posted, and I'm like, show me, tell me what he said. For one, I love reading your LinkedIn posts, and I know a lot of people do. And a lot of them I notice are surrounding the theme of resilience or coming out stronger at the very end, weathering the storm. So, what keeps, I guess everyone wants to know, what keeps Peter resilient and what keeps you weathering the storm, even though there's not always like a light at the end of the tunnel, or if we cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel.
So first, I'm grateful for the kindness. I I hope to give people perspective because my journey as a lawyer wasn't always easy, right? And when people say, what are you doing on LinkedIn? I always say to them, I have no idea, right? So, but I'll tell you this. And there are times where I will share and I say, I had a bad week last week.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we magnify and celebrate only successes. We don't acknowledge difficulties or challenges. And the word resilience, someone just shared a post and they said something about how resilience doesn't mean self-harm. And it was like, wow, that was so inspirational, right? So I'm reflecting because you always have to start with a framing, whether it's law or life, right? And I ask myself one question every time things go sideways. Does someone have it worse than me this second?
Mhm.
And the answer is always unequivocally yes. So, okay, take a deep breath. This too shall pass, no different than a kidney stone passes. It's not how we want it to pass sometimes, but
Mhm.
it passes. Um, and that's really the journey, right? Like I think it's, you know, I share with lawyers on our team. We were working on a file and we had a there are sometimes assignments where you can't do anything right. It doesn't matter what you do, it's going sideways. And I said to the lawyer, I said, he was like feeling it, like I could just feel the pressure. And I said, hey, you're not going to win all of them. It's okay.
Yeah.
And he just felt so relieved, right? Because in that moment, it's like, oh, Peter's mad at me, or oh, like, and there are times where I'll say to my team, hey, client's 100% right. We're wrong.
Mhm.
But also having that ability to say, it's not me, it's you,
Wow.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I can talk about this for a very long time because different partners have different styles. Different lawyers mentor differently. Some are losers and some are winners.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, sometimes the way people treat people is how they were treated. And I posted about this recently and I said, think about the worst experience you had. Make sure you're not treating someone the way you felt that day,
Wow.
Yeah.
right? So it really is these constant pauses. It's these, I'm always talking to myself, guys, I get on some calls and they're not very fun.
Mhm.
It's part of the business, I guess.
You roll with the punches.
Mm.
And I'll also tell you this too, is don't make these problems yours personally.
Mhm.
That's probably like the maturation of you.
Yeah.
Because if you want to help people, you have to you have to protect yourself.
Mhm.
Um, when I became managing partner, I had lunch with someone and I reached out to managing partners because I wanted to learn. And one gentleman said to me, he said, everyone comes into your office with a monkey on their back and they're trying to drop the monkey on your desk and leave. Your goal is to make sure they leave with the monkey on their back,
That's that's a funny way of
right?
putting it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sure. And I was like, oh, and someone actually, I posted about that, and someone's like, there was like I think it was like a Harvard Business School article from like 1970 something about
Mhm.
that. So true. I was like, yeah, it's true, right? Because people come to you with problems, they don't come with solutions.
Yeah.
Um, so some of these things are more abstract, but as a junior, I think the most important thing is don't put so much pressure on yourself. If you don't know, do the work.
Mhm.
If you can't, go ask. But don't be quick to shortcut the process and go ask too quick.
Wow.
People want to make sure you try,
Yeah.
right? Own mistakes, be responsible. All these little things win good favor. And then people say, no, no, it's not you, it's me. And now they've got your back. They've doubled down.
Mhm.
No one's got your back if you, at the first instance, I say, hey, Mira, can you look into this? And you come back 2 minutes later and, oh, I tried.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't got your back then. Like, you
Yeah.
clearly didn't try hard enough. 2 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
2 minutes
Yeah.
later, oh, I need help. Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and that's something that's definitely really important in terms of trying to establish that balance of knowing what you're
Mhm.
doing, but also making sure you're proactive. I do know there's a little bit of a time sensitive in terms of you have to head out. Do you have time for one more question, or sounds good?
Absolutely.
A little bit of a loaded one on my end, but for wrapping up this interview, you have impacted a lot of people, including myself, and including thousands of people that you have followers in terms of on LinkedIn, and even just throughout your professional legal career. And watching sports, I hear this a lot of talk about people talk about Jordan, LeBron legacy, things like that. And I'm curious to know, applying it in the legal field and applying it to you, I'd love to ask where you envision or what you would like your legacy to be in this profession over like if 100 years from now someone's looking at Peter Saad and thinking of you, what's the first thing you would like your legacy to be known as?
A good person. That's
Mhm.
it. Everything else goes sideways. The people that inspire me every day are the Waleed Solomons of the world. You want to talk about people who do good. Brilliant lawyer, but they do more good. And what you end up finding is as you're in this LinkedIn space and in this universe of talking to people, every time you meet someone, they've met they've met Clay Horner, they've met Waleed, they've met Marco Falco, and it's amazing because it's not like we're calling each other and saying, hey, go meet Mo, go meet Mira.
Mhm.
And so it's just the cycle is contagious. My hope is that if I'm ever remembered, is that I was a good person.
100%. That will help. I'm sure that legacy is gonna sustain and keep itself. Peter and Mira, thank you so much for taking the time to join me in this episode of Billable Time, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and really appreciate you taking the time.